Okay, so good morning. This is our first Stat Saturday, and we're going to start off with the first question from the first quiz, which came off of the 2015 AP Stat, and it was question number 1. So we have two large corporations, A and B, and they hire many new college graduates as accountants at entry-level positions. In 2009, the starting salary for an entry-level accountant was $36,000 a year at both of the companies. At each corporation, data were collected from 30 employees who were hired in 2009 as entry-level accountants and were still employed at the corporation 5 years later. The yearly salaries of the 60 employees in 2014 are summarized in the table below. And I'm just going to make a note to myself. This is 2014 after 5 years. Both of these, all right? This was not their entry salary. And they told me their entry salary happened to be at $36,000, which I'm going to say is about here. So that's about where they started. Okay, none of that's required. That's just helping me keep my stuff, keeping my stuff organized for when I answer the question. Well, the very first question says, write a few sentences comparing the distributions of the yearly salaries at the two corporations. Well, as soon as I say the word compare, it's like, oh, you know what? I know that this is what they want me to cuss and BS this thing. All right? And it's really important that when I cuss and BS that I'm not only describing the distributions, but I'm also making a comparison between the distributions, okay? So it says cuss and BS, and like, well, what are the first things I notice? Probably the first thing that stands out in my mind, the first thing I probably see is like, hey, I got outliers up here. That's interesting. So I noticed that. I noticed I have some outliers. The next thing I notice is like, you know what? I notice the medians are the same, and I noticed that. And the next thing I notice is because I'm sitting there at this point going cuss, center, unusual, shape, spread, because some of it jumps right out at me. And other parts I go, okay, got to go through that acronym. And I notice, you know what? This spread, A is further spread out. Cool. All right. So I noticed real quickly, I have center, unusual, because I have outliers, and I have spread. And then I look at the shape, and the shape is a little bit more difficult to discern with this. And quite frankly, wasn't even that necessary to talk about. So here's what I would have said. I like to always start with the center if I can. It's not required, just the way my mind thinks. And so the median salaries for the two distributions are approximately the same, all right? And at 51,000, you're like, well, it looked more like 52 to me. That's fine, doesn't matter, that's close enough, all right? The salaries lie within an interval of 36,000 to a high of 80,000, with a range of 44,000 at Corporation A. So basically, I just said Corporation A has a range of 44,000. At that point, I've addressed one of my spreads for Corporation A. All right, I haven't done it for B yet, but I've done it for A. The next thing says, while. I love this word while. This is a comparison word. It lets me know that I'm relating the two together, while the range is much less at Corporation B, whose range is 20,000 and lies with an interval from 40 to 60,000. The interquartile range of Corporation A is larger at 13,000, while B has an interquartile range of 9,000. And by the way, again, these are approximates, all right? Corporation A also has two outliers on the high side of the distribution, with one at 70,000 and the other at 80,000, while Corporation B has no outliers. Okay, so at that point, I've pretty well custom BS'd it. I was very specific, and you need to make sure I did address interquartile range and range. If you chose to do just the interquartile range, that's fine. If you chose just to do the range, that's fine. But make sure you address those things that you are able to see. If you're not able to see something, you're probably better off not addressing it. So I didn't specifically address shape because I didn't see it. I couldn't make a great determination as to what was going on. So suppose both corporations offered you a job for $36,000 a year. All right. So in other words, back to my starting salary at $36,000 as an entry-level accountant. Based on the box plots, give one reason why you might choose to accept the job at Corporation A. Well, I look at it and I go, you know what? If I'm trying to decide what company I'm going to work at, I might choose Corporation A because I know that they had some people that went from $36,000 as an entry level all the way. They had one person who made $80,000, another one who made $70,000, and the next highest was probably about $63,000. And by the way, I just want to address this right now while we're here. This is the highest value. We know this value exists. This is the highest value, not an outlier, okay? The highest value, not an outlier. And I want to address one other thing. Range does include the outliers. So the range had to go from the lowest all the way to the highest, all right? But this is the maximum value that was not an outlier. And when you run it through the 5-number summary on the calculator and you ask for the max, if there's an outlier, the max will be an outlier, okay? So here's what I said. After 5 years, at least 3 salaries are higher than all of the salaries at Corporation B, which means I might be able to make more money. You know what? I have an issue here. I might make more money if I end up being the highest salaries at Corporation A. I might make more money at Corporation A. I might make more money at Corporation A than at Corporation B. I might make more money at Corporation A than at Corporation B if I end up being one of the highest salaries. And that's because, once again, these 3 made more money than anyone at Corporation B. All right, the next one. Based on the box plots, give one reason you might choose to accept a job at Corporation B. Well, we just said that Corporation A, the 3 top guys were making more money, so that's why we choose Corporation A. But why might I choose Corporation B? Well, something happened at Corporation A. We see that there's at least one employee right here who never ever got a raise. Whereas at Corporation B, we know that everyone got a raise and ended up at least 40,000. So I might choose to be at Corporation B just because I'd be assured of having received a raise after the 5-year period. So I might choose Corporation B because the lowest salary at Corporation B after 5 years is higher than that of Corporation A. It appears that some at Corporation A never received a raise and are still at their starting salary of $36,000, while it appears that an employee would be assured a raise at Corporation B. So that's why I might do it. All right, I'm going to pause.
Okay. Can you guys see this scoring guideline with me? I think I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, awesome, guys. All right, so the big takeaway from this is that on Part A, there has to be a comparison. When you look at the down towards the bottom of the page where it says scoring for Part A, to get essentially correct, and basically the way that they grade it is essentially correct only has like few minor errors, and they're very detailed about what those can be. You can be partially correct or you can be incorrect, and they define those levels for you. For the essentially correct part, you have to make a comparison, and then they list specifically which comparisons have to be made. And again, comparison isn't just listing the center on one and listing the center on the other. You have to directly compare how they're alike or how they are different. And they were looking specifically for center, your spread, which is like the range, or IQR, and then you had to address that Corporation A had the outliers. Everything has to be in context of the problem. We noticed on the quiz that there were a lot of misconceptions on this question, of the students not realizing that it's the same people 5 years later. So a lot of the wording in their explanations would say something like the starting salary in question B is higher, corporation B is higher, but that's not in context of the problem, because it wasn't a starting salary. They had been there for 5 years and they were comparing what happened 5 years later. So make sure that you are understanding and reading that full prompt and really understanding the context. You would get a partially correct if only you addressed 3 of the 4 things. And if you only address 2, even though you did 2, it's still graded incorrect. So it's super important that you guys are using the acronym that Mr. Spencer and I gave you for CUS and BS, because we're trying to get to the max points. This can vary a little bit from year to year, but usually if you only address 2, that is still incorrect completely. Like you wouldn't be awarded any points on an actual exam for only doing 2 of the 4 CUS part of the acronym. For Part B, for getting your essentially correct, you have to make sure that it is justified with some statistical measure. So you can't just say, I have a potential higher salary at A. You have to give some sort of statistical measure to back that up. That is what justifying your answer means. There's different ways to do that depending on the measure that you want to use, but that's what we noticed on the quiz, was that a lot of students were not backing up their answer with a statistical measure. And then down here it tells you how to score the question completely based on your essentially corrects and your partially corrects on parts A and B. Any questions about how the grading works for AP College Board?
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and we can open up to any questions on this.